Don't you ever say bye-bye. Yeah. I love cloudy days because it makes my hair look that much more red. Sometimes I'm scared that I pass off too much for a blonde, but I'm a redhead. What's up, guys? My name is Moo. I'm a college student who loves reading, and I'm here to share that love with all of you. So, it is time for another Read Around the World video. I wanted to space them out just a little bit so that you are getting diverse content from me. You are not just getting the same thing week after week. I'm really trying hard. I have a lot of really fun ideas that I'm really excited for in the future. However, I am so excited for this series and I could not wait to film another one again. So today we are covering Asia. In total for Asia, there are 46 countries and or territories that I have listed. They are both countries recognized by the UN and territories that basically act independently of the nation that they are technically the territory of. So just keep that in mind. If you have not watched my original video explaining what my Read Around the World challenge is and what I have been following and all of these sort of explanations and disclaimers that I have stated, that will be up here for you to check out. But if you have already watched that and you are ready to dive into another leg of the Read Around the World series, let's go. So unless I state otherwise, all summaries are coming from Goodreads. They might differ from when I actually get my hands on the book, and the specific book version I get perhaps may have a different translation, a different summary. But for the purpose of this video, almost all of the summaries have been pulled from Goodreads. This is going to be a fairly mellow video, so if you want to put it in the background while you do some homework, do some chores, or just want some background noise while you read a book, play a game, whatever it is, background noise, this is the perfect video for that. I hope that you grab a snack, you get cozy, or you get ready to do what you are going to do, and let's get into it. First, from Afghanistan, we have My Pen is the Wing of the Bird by Afghan authors, and this is short stories and literary fiction. A woman's fortitude saves her village from disaster. A teenager explores their identity in a moment of quiet. A petition writer reflects on his life as a dog lies nursing her puppies. A tormented girl tries to find love through a horrific act. A headmaster makes his way to work, treading the fine line between life and death. My Pen is the Wing of a Bird is a landmark collection, the first anthology of short fiction by Afghan women. 18 writers tell stories that are both unique and universal. Stories of family, work, childhood, friendship, war, gender identity, and cultural traditions. This book reminds us that everyone has a story. Stories matter, so too the storytellers. Afghan women writers, informed and inspired by their own personal experiences, are best placed to bring us these powerful insights into the lives of Afghans, and most of all, the lives of women. Women's lives, in their own words, they matter. This collection introduces extraordinary voices from the country's two main linguistic groups, Pashto and Dari, with original, vital, and unexpected stories to tell, developed over 2 years through Untold's Right Afghanistan project. My Pen is the Wing of a Bird comes at a pivotal moment in Afghanistan's history when these voices must be heard. I love a short story collection. You will see many of these on the list. I just love hearing about a diverse range of stories from a set part of the world because it gives me multiple glimpses into one culture. I think that's so fantastic. So when I find short story collections from a country, I usually end up picking it up. Next is Armenia. The Grey House by Mariam Petrosyan. If you didn't already read the disclaimer, I'm sorry if I read the names wrong. I am trying my best. The Grey House is an astounding tale of how what others understand as liabilities can be leveraged onto strengths. Bound to wheelchairs and dependent on prosthetic limbs, the physically disabled students living in the house are overlooked by the outsides. Not that it matters to anyone living in the house, a hulking old structure that its residents know is alive. From the corridors and crawl spaces to the classrooms and dorms, the house is full of tribes, tinctures, scared teachers, and laws, all seen and understood through a prismatic array of teenagers' eyes. But student deaths and mounting pressure from the outsides put the time-defying order of the house in danger. As the tribe leaders struggle to maintain power, they defer to the awesome power of the house, attempting to make it through days and nights that pass in ways that clocks and watches cannot read. Next is Azerbaijan. I have an aunt from here, so I'm excited to learn more about it. There was not a lot of literature from here, so I have decided to read the story of Layla and Majnun by Nizami Kanchavi, which is poetry from the 12th century. The summary of this is the text is a prose rendition of Nizami's 12th century poetic masterpiece, in which he reshapes the legends of Majnun, the quintessential romantic fool, into a tale of the ideal lover. For the Sufis, Majnun represents the perfect devotee of the religion of the heart, and the story is an allegory for the soul's longing for God. Next is Bahrain, which is Yama by Sarah A. Al-Shafei, which is contemporary fiction. Khadija is a child who is forced into womanhood early. She is compelled to marry a man much older than she through an arranged marriage and lives in a world of hardships from then on. Her mother dies soon after her wedding, leaving her with a husband she hardly knows and two brothers she knows nothing of. Khadija learns to love her husband and wins his love in return, but just as she thought her life was a beautiful love story, her precious son dies from a scorpion bite. Grief and sadness become her new best friends. Her husband, whom she can't live without, abandons her without warning, and she is left to raise and support 8 children while pregnant with the 9th. Her brother, who finds out about his sister's misfortune and the truth behind his brother-in-law's actions, returns to Bahrain to take care of Khadija, but when he finds out about his cheating wife, falls ill with sadness and grief and soon dies. Khadija forces herself to survive with the faith and patience she has inherited from her late mother and faces life's war with strength, courage, and pride. She grows with her children, she grows with time, she grows with history, her country's history. She succeeds in raising wonderful children who go through their own share of happiness and misfortune. Her husband, who marries another woman for money, returns filled with regret and in a wheelchair. Though Khadija was hurt and angry, she opens her arms for him with love and forgiveness, but watching him die in her arms takes her back in a time as she goes through the grief all over again. As a great-grandmother, Khadija sits back to watch her triumph, her success, and dies with dignity, leaving behind a legend to be remembered by many. So that summary basically told the entire story, but I still found it incredibly compelling and I am very excited to read it. From Bangladesh is Good Girls by Lisa Ghazi, which is a thriller and literary fiction. In this richly unnerving tale about family secrets and expectations, 2 sisters are at lifelong odds with each other, their mother, and themselves, and as every hour becomes more twisted than the last, they are all pushed to their breaking point. Lovely and Beauty are at home beneath the watchful eye of their mother. Life has never included friends and education or anything the sisters can call their own. Their comings and goings are supervised by Farida. Otherwise, they don't come and go at all. That changes on Lovely's 40th birthday. In a stroke of inexplicable fortune, Farida permits her eldest daughter to go to the Kausia market alone, with no instructions but to abide by her curfew. For once on her own, Lovely is goaded by the voice in her head to push her mother's and her own boundaries. New experiences and old memories abound as her family awaits her return. But with the taste of freedom so fresh on her tongue, Lovely is spurred by her own disembodied companion to hang out on her newfound independence. When home isn't a safe haven, Lovely must find somewhere else to turn. From Bhutan is Tales in Color and Other Stories by Kanzong Chodan, which I think is a really cool title. It's very similar to the title Love in Color that I have reviewed on this channel before, but it is a completely different collection of short stories by a different author. What are the new realities that confront Bhutanese women today? What challenges do they face when their tradition-bound, close-knit family life is suddenly replaced by the anonymity of an urban existence? These deceptively simple stories uncover both the complexity and irony of women's lives in contemporary Bhutan. They show how ordinary lives, choices, and experiences are both remarkable and poignant. In I Am a Small Person, a despised woman uses her femininity as a means to control a man. The young girl in I Won't Ask Mother suddenly feels empowered and confident when she makes a decision without consulting her mother. All the stories take place in rural settings, to which creeping urbanization brings gradual change, and tensions surface between the new and the old, or the traditional and the modern. For many rural women, being able to connect to the city and all its perceived glamour and power is a very real aspiration, and one that is sensitively dealt with in stories like Look at Her Belly Button and The Photograph. From Brunei is I Am Not Your Eve by Devika Panapalam, which is biographical fiction and mythology. A polyphonic novel of Tehe Amana, Tahitian muse and child bride to Paul Gauguin, from her point of view conveyed through the myths and legends of the islands. Short and sweet. From Cambodia was First They Killed My Father by Lawang Ung, which is a memoir. From a childhood survivor of the Cambodian genocide under the regime of Pol Pot, this is a riveting narrative of war crimes and desperate actions, the unnerving strength of a small girl and her family, and their triumph of spirit. One of 7 children of a high-ranking government official, Lawang Ung lives a privileged life in the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh until the age of 5. Then, in April 1975, Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge army stormed into the city, forcing Ung's family to flee and eventually to disperse. Luong was trained as a child soldier in a work camp for orphans. Her siblings were sent to labor camps, and those who survived the horrors would not be reunited until the Khmer Rouge was destroyed. Harrowing yet hopeful, Laung's powerful story is an unforgettable account of a family shaken and shattered, yet miraculously sustained by courage and love in the face of unspeakable brutality. I know that Jack Edwards also brought this book up and then said that he wanted to have a different one because he really wants to do mostly literature. I have the same opinion. However, I've been aware of this book since the spring. I learned about it independently and I just thought it was fascinating. So I decided to put it in my list for this. I also have a lot of other memoirs from the time of the Khmer Rouge being in power that I would like to read, but this is the one that I chose for this list. For China, it is The Dream of the Red Chamber by Cao Quinn. So sorry. This is classics and historical fiction. Dream of the Red Chamber, also known as The Story of the Stone, is one of the greatest novels of Chinese literature. The book begins with the tale of Bao Yu, a gentle young boy who prefers girls to Confucian studies, and his two Bao Chai, his parents' choice of a wife for him, and the ethereal beauty Tai Yu. Through the changing fortunes of the Jia family, this rich, magical work sets worldly events, love affairs, sibling rivalries, political intrigues, even murder, within the context of the Buddhist understanding that earthly existence is an illusion and karma determines the shape of our lives. For Cyprus, I actually own the book that will be under this. It is a book that I'm sure many of you have heard of before. It is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. The summary says this: Alicia Berenson's life is seemingly perfect, until one night when her husband, Gabriel, returns home late from work and Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face and then never speaks another word. Alicia's refusal to talk or give any kind of explanation turns a domestic tragedy into a mystery that captures the public imagination, and she, the silent patient, is hidden away from the tabloids at the Grove, a secure psychiatric unit in North London. Criminal psychotherapist Theo Faber is captivated by Alicia's story and jumps at the opportunity to work with her. His determination to get her to talk and unravel the mystery of why she shot her husband will take him down a path more unexpected and more terrifying than he ever imagined. For East Timor, I was not able to find a book, so if you know any literature from the area that is translated into English, please let me know in the comments. From Georgia, the country, not the state. I only say that because I so many times was like, oh yeah, I worked with a guy who did study abroad for a year. He was from Georgia. It was really cool. And they would be like, the state? Georgia's a state. No, the country, you dingus. Sorry for the very abrupt craziness in this video. is The Pearfield by Nana Ekvitmishvili, which is coming of age and historical fiction. In post-Soviet Georgia, on the outskirts of Tbilisi, on the corner of Kerch Street, is an orphanage. Its teachers offer pupils lessons in violence, abuse, and neglect. Layla is old enough to leave but has nowhere else to go. She stays and plans for the children's escape. For the future, she hopes to give Irakli, a young boy, in the home. When an American couple visits, offering the prospect of a new life, Layla decides she must do everything she can to give Irakli this chance. Hong Kong is Many a Splendid Thing by Han Su-yin. I searched so long for some sort of longer summary than this, but I was unable to find it, so the summary is one sentence. It is a poignant human document which tells of a great love story lived and suffered in the turbulent Hong Kong of today. I'm really excited to read it, but that is all that I could offer you right now. I will tell you more when I do end up reading it. From India is Panchatantra, the Book of India's Folk Wisdom by Vishnu Sharma, which is short stories and fables. The Panchatantra is the most famous collection of fables in India and was one of the earliest Indian books to be translated into Western languages. No other work of Indian literature has had a greater influence on world literature, and no other collection of stories has become as popular in India itself. From Indonesia is Man Tiger by Ika Kurniawan, which is literary fiction. A wry, affecting tale set in a small town on the Indonesian coast, Man Tiger tells the story of two interlinked and tormented families and of Margio, a young man ordinary in all particulars except that he conceals within himself a supernatural female white tiger. The inequities and betrayals of family life coalesce around and torment this magical being. An explosive act of violence follows, and its mysterious cause is unraveled as events progress towards a heartbreaking revelation. Lyrical in body, experimental and political, this extraordinary novel announces the arrival of a powerful new voice on the global literary stage. From Iran is The Space Between Us by Zoya Pirzad, which is literary fiction. The more that I am going through this list, the more I'm going, oh, I have a connection to that country. I have a connection to Georgia and Azerbaijan and Iran. I also have a very close family friend who I view as an uncle from Iran. So, in a small town on the edge of the Caspian Sea, Edmund Lazarian and his best friend Tahira pass their days playing together, drifting between the delights of beachcombing and the joys of the sherbet shop. Although Edmund is Armenian and Tahira is the Muslim daughter of the school's janitor, they remain blissfully unaware of the disquiet that ripples the surface calm of their close-knit community. Yet years later, when Edmund's daughter chooses a Muslim to marry, tensions inevitably build. Unable to keep sidestepping the prejudices around him, Edmund is finally forced to make a choice, and one that will haunt him for years to come. From the critically acclaimed author of Things We Left Unsaid, The Space Between Us is a poignant, wistful story about belonging and otherness, pride and prejudice, and the pressures and family expectations that inform our decisions. Brilliantly painting the landscape of intricate social conventions and private emotional conflict, Pirzad has produced an intimate portrait of ordinary Iranians living everyday lives, which I think is very important to paint. People living everyday lives in places all around the world. On an offhand note, I want to know how many times throughout this entire Read Around the World summary series, how many times I say poignant. It is in so many summaries. I feel like I've said that word more in these videos than I've said in my entire life. It's insane. But let's move on to the next one. From Iraq is The Iraqi Christ by Hassan Blassim, which is short stories and fiction. A soldier with the ability to predict the future finds himself blackmailed by insurgents into the ultimate act of terror. A deviser of crosswords survives a car bomb attack, only to discover he is now haunted by one of its victims. Fleeing a robbery, a Baghdad shopkeeper falls into a deep hole, at the bottom of which sits a genie and the corpse of a soldier from a completely different war. From legends of the desert to horrors of the forest, Blossoms' stories blend the fantastic with the everyday, the surreal with the all too real. Taking his cues from Kafka, his prose shines a dazzling light into the dark absurdities of Iraq's recent past and the torment of its countless refugees. The subject of this, his second collection, is primarily trauma and the curious strategies human beings adopt to process it, including, of course, fiction. The result is a masterclass in metaphor, a new kind of storytelling forged into the crucible of war and just as shocking. From Israel is Amor by Mayan Eitan, which is fiction. It is the winner of the 2022 National Jewish Book Award for Hebrew Fiction in Translation. Love is a fever dream of a novel about a young sex worker whose life blurs the boundaries between violence and intimacy, objectification, and real love. Startlingly vulnerable and lyrically deft, Mayan Eitan's debut follows Libby as she goes about her work in a nameless Israel city, riding in cars, seeing clients, meeting and befriending other sex workers and pimps. In prose as crystalline as it is unflinching, Eitan brings us into the mind of her fierce protagonist as Libby spins a series of fictions to tell herself and others in order to negotiate her life under the gaze of men. After long nights of slipping in and out of beds of strangers, in a shocking moment of violence, she seizes control of her narrative and then labors to construct a life that resembles normalcy. But as she pursues love, it continuously eludes her. She discovers that her past nights in cheap hotel rooms eerily resemble the more conventional life she's trying to forge. A literary sensation in Israel, Mayan Eitan's debut sets off a firestorm about the relationship between truth and fiction and the experiences of women under the power of men. Compact and gem-like, this is a contemporary allegory of a young woman on the verge. This is another explicit circumstance where I wanted to highlight the lives of regular people instead of platforming the governments and institutions that perhaps are harming a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and I hope you can understand that. If you are to debate it, please do it respectfully in the comments. The next book is another book I own. It is Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. If you want to watch a more in-depth video about that, I have it linked up here. The summary is, Kafka on the Shore is powered by two remarkable characters. A teenage boy, Kafka Tamura, who runs away from home either to escape a gruesome Oedipus prophecy or to search for his long-missing mother and sister, and an aging simpleton called Nakata, who never recovered from a wartime affliction and now is drawn towards Kafka for reasons that he cannot fathom. As their paths converge, Haruki Murakami enfolds readers in a world where cats talk, fish fall from the sky, and spirits slip out of their bodies to make love or commit murder. Kafka on the Shore displays one of the world's great storytellers at the peak of his powers. Next is Jordan, and it is The Bride of Aman by Fadi Zagmount, which is literary fiction. The Bride of Aman, a huge and controversial bestseller when first published in Arabic, takes a sharp-eyed look at the intersecting lives of 4 women and 1 gay man in Jordan's historic capital, Amman, a city deeply imbued with its nation's traditions and taboos. When Rana finds herself not only falling for a man of the wrong faith, but also getting into trouble with him, where can they go to escape? Can Hayat's secret liaisons really suppress the memories of her abusive father? When Ali is pressured by society's homophobia into a fake heterosexual marriage, how long can he maintain the illusion? And when the spinsterhood and divorce spell social catastrophe, is living a lie truly the best option for Layla? What must she do to avoid reaching her expiry date at age 30 like her sister Salma, Jordan's secret blogger and self-confessed spinster with a plot up her sleeve to defy her city's prejudices? These 5 young lives come together and come apart in ways that are distinctly modern, yet as unique and timeless as Amman itself. Kazakhstan is Amanat, Women's Writing from Kazakhstan by various authors, which are short stories and feminist fiction. A man is arrested for a single typo. A woman gets on buses at random, and 2 friends reunite in a changed world. Diverse in form, scope, and style, Amanat brings together the voices of 13 female Kazakhstani writers to offer a glimpse into the many lives, stories, and histories of one of the largest countries to emerge from the breakup of the Soviet Union. The 24 stories in Amanat, translated into English from Kazakh and Russian, comprise a groundbreaking survey of women's writing in the Central Asian country over its 30 years of independence, paying homage to the rich but largely unrecorded oral storytelling tradition of the region. Contemplating nostalgia, politics, and intergenerational history in a time altered by modernity, Amana acutely traces the uncertainties, struggles, joys, and losses of a corner of the post-Soviet world often unseen and overlooked. Utterly absorbing, Amana is an invitation to listen. The women of Kazakhstan have stories to tell, and I am so excited to hear what they have to say. Next, we are going to do both the Koreas, because that's just how I alphabetized it. So we'll start with the North, and it is Friends by Paek Nam-yong, which is literary fiction. Paek Nam-yong's Friend is a tale of marital intrigue, abuse, and divorce in North Korea. A woman in her 30s comes to a courthouse petitioning for a divorce. As the judge who hears her statement begins to investigate the case, the story unfolds into a broader consideration of love and marriage. The novel delves into its protagonist's past, describing how the couple first fell in love and then how their marriage deteriorated over the years. It chronicles the toll their acrimony takes on their son and their careers alongside the story of the judge's own marital troubles. A bestseller in North Korea, where Paek continues to live and write, Friend illuminates a side of life in the DPRK that Western readers have never before encountered. Far from being a propagandistic screed in praise of the great leader, Friend describes the lives of people who struggle with everyday problems such as marital woes and workplace conflicts. Instead of socialist realist stock figures, Paek depicts complex characters who wrestle with universal questions of individual identity, the split between public and private selves, the unpredictability of existence, and the never-ending labor of maintaining a relationship. This groundbreaking translation of one of North Korea's most popular writers offers English language readers a page-turner full of psychological tension, as well as a revealing portrait of society that is typically seen as closed to the outside world. And I, for one, would love to see more of a glimpse into that world, and one day see that world opened up to a lot more people. I had the opportunity to go to the DMZ this past summer, and it was incredibly life-changing, and I really hope that one day I am able to visit in a time where it is safe for many people to do so. Now from South Korea is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. It is the winner of a Nobel Literature Prize. Han Kang is just an amazing, prolific author, and yes, I'm biased because my area of studies is in Korea, and I am so excited to read this book, but Korean literature is so good, and I'm so glad that it's getting pushed out into the world more. And yeah, let's just read the summary. Before the nightmares began, Hyung-hye and her husband lived an ordinary, controlled life. But the dreams, invasive images of blood and brutality, torture her, driving Hyung-hye to pursue her mind and renounce eating meat altogether. It's a small act of independence, but interrupts her marriage and sets into motion an increasingly grotesque chain of events at home. As her husband, her brother-in-law, and her sister each fight to reassert their control, Hyung-hye obsessively defends the choice that's become sacred to her. Soon their attempts turn desperate, subjecting first her mind, and then her body, to ever more intrusive and perverse violations, sending Hyung-hye spiraling into a dangerous, bizarre estrangement not only from those closest to her, but also from herself. Celebrated by critics around the world, The Vegetarian is a darkly allegorical, Kafkaesque tale of power, obsession, and one woman's struggle to break free from the violence both outside and within her. There is a lot of Kafka mentioned in this video as well. I think that is very interesting too. I also think that as a reader and a immense lover of Korean culture, to the fact that I someday want to be a literary translator for Korean literature, I do think it is a crime that I haven't read this book yet, and I will atone for my sins as soon as possible. On to the next one, we have Kuwait, Before the Queen Falls Asleep by Hizama Habayeb, which is coming of age in contemporary fiction. Born a girl to parents who expected a boy, Jihad grows up treated like the eldest son, wearing boys' clothing and sharing the financial burden of head of the household with her father. Now middle-aged, each night Jihad tells her daughter a story from her life. As Maleka prepares to leave home to attend university abroad, her mother revisits the past of their Palestinian family, tenderly describing their life in exile in Kuwait and her own experiences of love and loss as she grows up. Hazama Habayeb weaves a richly observed and affectionate portrait of a Palestinian family displaced from their homeland, exploring with humor and poise the love and betrayal that pursues jihad and her family from Kuwait to Jordan to Dubai. This is a novel whose words will resound long after you finish the final page. From Kyrgyzstan is An Orange Lemon by Alla Pyatibratova, which is short stories and literary fiction. And the source for this summary is Reading Women Worldwide. A nutshell, this story from Kyrgyzstan follows an out-of-work hydrologist and a mother, Maria, who spends tiring and uninspiring days undertaking paid protest in a square, a line. From the first day, Maria had promised herself that she wouldn't buy into the rules of the game, that she would only try to abide by them, even if it was a game for fools. An image. At one point, Maria looks at the square and can only see a live, shifting, varicolored mass, surrounded like a force field by a thick wall of sound. Color is important in the narrative. There are 11 mentions of yellow, the color worn by the protesters on this particular day, as Maria struggles to keep up with the changing significance of certain colors. A thought. It felt like Maria was losing her awareness of what was going on, not just externally, but also internally. Early on, she doesn't notice that her sleeve is torn and her arm is bruised, and pauses to wonder how she could have hurt her arm and not felt it, which seemed to stem from protesting out of desperation for a paycheck. A fact. Pyatibratova is a journalist based in Osh, near the border with Uzbekistan. The city has over 3,000 years of history included, having been a major market along the Silk Road. In 1990 and 2010, the city has seen ethnic riots and violence break out. So that is just a bit of a summary about that story. From Laos is How to Pronounce Knife by Silvankam Thamavongsa, which are short stories and literary fiction. In the title story of the author's debut collection, a young girl brings a book home from school and asks her father to help her pronounce a tricky word. A simple exchange with unforgettable consequences. Thamavongsa is a master at honing in on moments like this. Moments of exposure, dislocation, and messy feeling that push us right against the limits of language. The stories that make up How to Pronounce Knife focus on characters struggling to find their bearings in unfamiliar territory, or shuttling between idioms, cultures, and values. A failed boxer discovers what it truly means to be a champion when he starts painting nails at his sister's salon. A young woman tries to discern the invisible but immutable social hierarchies at a chicken processing plant. A mother coaches her daughter in the challenging art of worm harvesting. In a taut, visceral prose style that establishes her as one of the most striking and assured voices of her generation, Thamavongsa interrogates what it means to make a living, to work, and to create meaning. From Lebanon is Voices of the Lost by Hoda Barakat, which is literary fiction. And this book is the winner of the International Prize for Arabic Fiction. This profound and disturbing novel by acclaimed Lebanese author Hoda Barakat tells the story of characters living on the periphery, battling with poverty, and fighting their own demons. Set in an unarmed, war-torn country, the novel consists of 6 letters, all intercepted by unintended recipients, all of whom are compelled to write their own letters of confession. An undocumented immigrant writes his former lover. A woman in a hotel writes a man from her past. An escaped torturer recounts his crimes to his mother. A former prostitute writes to her brother. A young queer man recounts to his estranged father his partner's battle with AIDS. Finally, the mailman leaves his own note. Incisive, troubling, and deeply human, this is an urgent story of lives intimately woven together in a society that is tearing itself apart. Next is a book that you have seen before. It is from Malaysia. It is Spirits Abroad by Zen Cho. 19 sparkling stories that weave between the lands of the living and the lands of the dead. Spirits Abroad is an expanded edition of Zen Cho's Crawford Award-winning debut collection with 9 added stories, including Hugo Award winner If at First You Don't Succeed, Try Again. Adetun recalls her romance with an Orang Bunyan. A teenage Pontianak struggles to balance homework, bossy aunties, first love, and eating people. An earth spirit gets entangled in protracted negotiations with an annoying landlord, and Chang'e spins off into outer space, the ultimate metaphor for the Chinese diaspora. From the Maldives is Folktales of the Maldives by Xavier Romero Frias, which is short stories and folklore. The Maldives are mainly known as an equatorial tourist paradise to the south of India, but some will know the archipelago risks drowning owing to global warming. Far less is known about the people who have occupied these lands for millennia, whose deep indigenous culture is today under threat from a multitude of external forces. This volume is a collection of 80 traditional short stories and legends selected from the large corpus of stories in the local oral tradition, and translated and illustrated by the author who is the foremost authority on the language and anthropology of the Maldives. These folktales offer keen insights to both the history, culture, and beliefs of the people of the Maldives and into the world they live in. The close relationship the Maldivans have with their environment is clear. Likewise, the syncretic nature of their Islamic faith, the tales bustling with spirits, sorcerers, and monsters, as well as local people, seabirds, etc. Would-be travelers to the Maldives will find this a unique insight to the real country behind the tourist brochures. For scholars, the folktales of analytical material offer a wonderful literary/folklore resource, as well as fresh perspectives on the effects of globalization. Really interesting. I love that you get to talk about so many topics when doing a challenge such as this. From Mongolia is The Green-Eyed Llama by Onyangarel Sedevdama, which is historical fiction. The year is 1938. The newly installed communist government of Mongolia, under orders from Moscow, launches a nationwide purge. Before it's over, nearly a tenth of the country's population is murdered. Sendma, a young nomadic herdswoman, falls in love with Pasan, a talented and handsome Buddhist Lama. Pasan resolves to leave the priesthood and marry Sedma, where her scheming neighbor persuades Pasan's brother Bold to ask a bride first. Their love triangle is engulfed by tragedy when Choibosan, Mongolia's Stalin, moves to crush the Buddhist faith. Pasan is arrested. Sedma, Bold, and the other northern herders are branded counter-revolutionists, their animals confiscated. As the country teeters towards war, Pasan is sentenced to death as a class enemy. But an improbable ally, a llama-turned-KGB agent, intervenes in a way that reaches all the way to Franklin Roosevelt. Still, Pasan must summon every bit of his talent and ingenuity if he's to survive the Gulag, reunite with Sendma, and help save the Buddhist faith. Next is Myanmar, and it is Crossing the Farak River by Michelle Ong Thin, which is YA historical fiction. For Hasina and her younger brother Araf, the constant threat of Sitthat, the Myanmar army, is a way of life in the Rakhine province. Just uttering the name is enough to send chills down their spines. As Rohingyas, they know that when they hear the wop 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 of the helicopters, there is one thing to do: run and don't stop. So when the soldiers invade their village one night and Hasina wakes to her aunt's fearful voice, followed by smoke and then a scream, run is what they do. Hasina races deep into the Rakhine forest to hide with her cousin Kadia and Araf. When they emerge some days later, it is to a smoldering village. Their house is standing, but where is the rest of her family? With so many Rohingyas driven out, Hasina must figure out who she can trust for help and summon the courage to fight for her family amid the escalating conflict that threatens her world and her identity. Fast-paced and accessibly written, Crossing the Farak River tackles an important topic frequently in the news but little explored in fiction. It is a poignant and thought-provoking introduction for young readers to the military crackdown and ongoing persecution of Rohingya people from the perspective of a brave and resilient protagonist. Next is Nepal, the Tutor of History by Manjushri Thapa, which is historical fiction. The Tutor of History is an ambitious social saga, a compelling tale of idealism, love, and alienation set in contemporary Nepal caught between tradition and modernity. The events of the novel unfold against the backdrop of a campaign for parliamentary elections in the bustling roadside town of Karyani-Tar. At its heart, the book is about four main characters. Giridhar Adhikari, the chairman of the People's Party's district committee who suffers from a serious alcohol addiction, and strange, violent Manias, Rishi Pajuli, a lonely, underemployed bachelor and disillusioned communist who gives private tuitions in history to disinterested middle-class boys. Gurung, a former British Gurkha determined to bring love into every life in his hometown. And Benita Dahal, a reclusive young widow who runs a small tea shop and is careful not to demand of life more than the meager pleasures it brings her. As the elections campaign reaches its peak, the crisis in each character's life mounts, and the eventual rigging of elections becomes a metaphor for the flawed. Imperfect choices that ordinary people must make to get by in a world beyond their control. From Oman is Celestial Bodies by Choka Oharthi, which is domestic fiction. It is also the winner of the Man Booker International Prize of 2019. Celestial Bodies is set in the village of Al Awafi in Oman, where we encounter three sisters: Maya, who marries Abdullah after a heartbreak, Asma, who marries from a sense of duty, and Kuala, who rejects all offers while waiting for her beloved, who has immigrated to Canada. These three women and their families witness Oman evolve from a traditional slave-owning society, slowly redefining itself after the colonial era, to the crossroads of its complex present. Elegantly structured and taught, Celestial Bodies is a coiled spring of a novel, telling Oman's coming of age through the prism of one family's losses and loves. From Pakistan is Cartography by Kamila Shamsi, which is historical fiction and romance. Raheen and her best friend Karim share an idyllic childhood in upper-class Karachi. Their parents were even once engaged to each other's partners until they remarried in what they called the fiancé swap. But as adolescents distance the friends, Karim takes refuge in maps while Raheen searches for the secret behind her parents' exchange. What she uncovers reveals not just a family's, but country's turbulent history, and a grown-up Raheen and Karim are caught between strange friendship and fated love. A love story with a family mystery at its heart, Cartography is a dazzling novel by a young writer of astonishing maturity and exhilarating style. Shamsi transports us to a world where we have not often seen in fiction vibrant, dangerous, sensuous Pakistan. But even as she takes us far from the familiar, her story of passion and family secrets rings universally true. Next, from Palestine, is My First and Only Love by Sahar Khalifa, which is historical fiction. A deeply poetic account of love and resistance through a young girl's eyes by Sahar Khalifa. After many decades of restless exile, Nadal returns to her family home in Nablus, where she had lived with her grandmother before the 1948 Nakba that scattered her family across the globe. She was a young girl when the popular resistance began, and through the bloodshed and bitter struggle, Nadal fell in love with Rabi, a freedom fighter. He was her first and only real love, him and all that he represented. Palestine in its youth and spring, the resistance fighters in the hills, the nation as embodied in her family home and in the land. Years later, Nidal and Rabi meet, and he encourages her to read her uncle Amin's memoirs. She immerses herself in the details of her family and national past, that her absent mother had been nurse and lover to Palestinian leader Abdel Qadir al-Husseini. Set in the final days of the British Mandate, Sahar Khalifa spins an epic tale filled with emotional urgency and political immediacy. Next, I have another book that I own, is The Girl from the Well by Rin Chupeco. Kiko knows anger and pain. They are what she last felt before her life was brutally taken from her more than 300 years ago. Now a restless spirit, she wanders, seeking out those who viciously take the lives of children. Okiko always gets her vengeance. She has no remorse for the wicked, until she meets 17-year-old Tark. From Qatar is The Lost Road by Kumam Al-Madid, which is fantasy. Clara has a terrible secret, a sin she won't reveal, not even to Luca, the man who rescues her from the lake where she's thrown herself, hoping death would silence her pain. While Luca nurses Clara to health and tries to gain her trust, mutiny is brewing in Taran, their neighboring kingdom. When news of this reaches Luca, he and Clara travel together to stay out of danger. But little do they know that the usurper Adrian, an evil sorcerer who is determined to magically enslave Clara into marriage, is already on their heels. Clara's sin catches up with her as she and Luca meet the magical wanderers who reveal her secret. As they stand in the middle of a battle against Adrian, can Luca forgive Clara's sin and stay true to his promise of keeping her safe? Will Clara's own magic and determination prove enough to repel Adrian's sorcery? And even with the help of unexpected allies, will the couple be able to save the kingdom they have lost to darkness? Next, from Russia, is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It is a classic. Crime and Punishment is the story of a murder and its consequences, a tale of suspense without equal. Set in Russia in the midst of its troublous transition to the modern age, the novel's driven young hero, Raskolnikov, is a sensitive intellectual driven by poverty to believe that he was exempt from moral law. The unforgettable gallery of characters, ranging from police inspector to prostitute, from incorrigible sinner to unbearable prig, inhabit the charged atmosphere of a large Russian city in the 19th century. Here, in a brilliant translation by the noted scholar and literary critic Sidney Monas, it is one of the world's greatest novels. Crime and Punishment is the supreme expression of an author who explored pathological states in the psychology of high tension, the realm of obsession and possession, because it was there one could most clearly and dramatically see the human consequences of an idea carried ruthlessly through its logical conclusion. For Dostoevsky, an idea always has skin around it and human personality. Next is a book I also own, which is Girls of Riyadh by Raja Al-Sani, and it is literary fiction. Released in 2005 in Arabic, Girls of Riyadh caused a sensation throughout the Arab world. Now in English, Raja Al-Sani's bold first novel exposes the hidden lives of young upper-class women and their personal conflicts with cultural tradition and offers Westerners an unprecedented glimpse into a society often veiled from view. From the Saudi single scene in Riyadh to their travels outside of the country, 4 young women, Kamra, Michelle, Sadim, and Lamiz, literally and figuratively shed traditional garb and negotiate their love lives, their professional successes, their rebellions, large and small, and ultimately their place somewhere in between contemporary Western society and their Islamic home. Next, Sri Lanka is A Disobedient Girl by Rue Freeman, and it is fiction. In one of the most impressive debuts of the year, Rue Freeman offers us a mesmerizing tale set in her native Sri Lanka of 2 women, strangers to one another, whose destinies are inextricably and tragically bound. In her heart, Latha knows that she was not meant to be a servant. She was born for finer things like the rose-smelling Lux soap she steals, the glass of fresh lime juice that she helps herself to, and the brand new shoes she begs for. But her fate is dictated by the Vithanajas, the family she has been working for since she was 5 years old. We follow Latha's story for 30 years as she fights for her dignity and navigates the loss of her innocence, competing with Thara Vithanaj, a girl her own age who enjoys every freedom that Latha yearns for but is denied, including the love of an ordinary boy. Interwoven with Latha's story is the tale of Biso, a devoted mother who has decided to leave her coastal southern town and escape from her abusive husband, taking her 3 young children with her. But her journey towards a better life in the mountains results in a series of devastating missteps that connect her life with that of Latha's in an unexpected and heartbreaking way. A Disobedient Girl is a compelling exploration of personal desire set against the volatile backdrop of class and prejudice as 2 women journey towards their future, united by a shared history, but separated by different fates. From Syria is Alligator and Other Stories by Dima Al-Zayat, which is short stories, historical fiction, and literary fiction. The award-winning stories in Dima Al-Zayat's collection are luminous and tender, whether dealing with a woman performing burial rites for her brother in Kusul, or a great aunt struggling to explain cultural identity to her niece in Once We Were Syrians. Al-Zayat's stories are rich and relatable, chronicling a sense of displacement throughout everyday scenarios. There is the intern in pre-#MeToo Hollywood of Only Those Who Struggle Succeed, the New York City children on the lookout for a place to play on the heels of a 10 Paisat's kidnapping and disappearance, and the dangerous women of Daughters of Manat who struggle to assert their independence. The title story, Alligator, is a masterpiece of historical reconstruction and the intergenerational trauma told in an epistolary format through social media posts, newspaper clippings, and testimonials that start with a true story of the lynching of a Syrian immigrant couple by law officers in small-town Florida. Placed in a wider context of U.S. racial violence, the extrajudicial deaths, and what happens to the couple's children and their children's children in the years after, challenges the demands of American assimilation and its limits. Alligator and Other Stories is haunting, spellbinding, and unforgettable while making Dima Al-Zayat's arrival as a tremendously gifted new talent. From Taiwan, and I find this kind of funny, is Notes of a Crocodile by Q Miaojin, which is LGBTQ in historical fiction. I just thought it was kind of funny that we had alligator and crocodile so close to one another on the list. Set in the post-marital law era of 1980s Taipei, Notes of a Crocodile depicts the coming of age of a group of queer misfits discovering love, friendship, and artistic affinity while hurriedly studying at Taiwan's most prestigious university. Told through the eyes of an anonymous lesbian narrator nicknamed Lazzy, Q Miaojin's quote classic novel is a postmodern pastiche of diaries, vignettes, mash notes, aphorisms, ecstasies, and satire by an incisive prose stylist and countercultural icon. Afflicted by her fatalistic attraction to Shaoling, an older woman, Lazzy turns for support to a circle of friends that include a rich kid turned criminal and his troubled, self-destructive gay lover, as well as a bored, mischievous overachiever and her alluring slacker artist girlfriend. Illustrating a process of liberation from the strictures of gender through radical self-inquiry, Notes of a Crocodile is a poignant masterpiece of social defiance by a singular voice in contemporary Chinese literature. That was a hard one for me to read. There were a lot of big words in there. From Tajikistan is Haramabad by Andrei Volos, which is historical fiction. Winner of 4 prizes, Haramabad describes the eviction of Russians from Tajikistan in the national strife following the collapse of the USSR. A resident of Dushanbe, Andrei Volos witnessed the civil war with its insane destruction, ethnic hatred, bloody vengeance, ruthless struggle for power, and violent demonstrations instigated by cynical politicians. From Thailand is The Blind Earthworm in the Labyrinth by Veeraporn Nitiparfa, which is fantasy. On the day Charya is born, her mother discovers her father having an affair with a traditional Thai dancer. From then on, Charya's life is fated to carry the weight of her parents' disappointments. She and her sister grow up in a lush riverside town near the Thai capital Bangkok, captivated by trashy romance novels, classical music, and games of make-believe. When the laconic orphan Pran enters their world, he unwittingly lures the sisters into a labyrinth of their own making as they each try to escape their intertwined fates. The original Thai language edition of The Blind Earthworm in the Labyrinth won prestigious Southeast Asian Writers Award for Fiction and was a bestseller in Thailand. It is translated into English by Thai film critic and recipient of Francis Chevalier Dunn's L'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres Kong Rithdi. Sorry. Attuned to the addictive rhythms of a Thai soap opera and written with the consuming intensity of a fever dream, this novel opens an insightful and truly compelling window onto the Thai heart. From Tibet is We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies by Tsirsing Yangzom Lama, which is literary fiction. In the wake of China's invasion of Tibet through the 1950s, Lamo and her younger sister Tenki arrive at a refugee camp in Nepal. They survived the dangerous journey across the Himalayas, but their parents did not. As Lamo, haunted by the loss of her homeland and her mother, a village oracle, tries to rebuild a life amid a shattered community, hope arrives in the form of a young man named Samphel and his uncle, who brings with him the ancient statue of the nameless saint, a relic known to vanish and reappear in times of need. Decades later, the sisters are separated, and Tenki is living with Lamos' daughter Tolma in Toronto. While Tenki works as a cleaner and struggles with traumatic memories, Tolma vies for a place as a scholar for Tibetan studies. But when Tolma comes across the nameless saint in a collector's vault, she must decide what she is willing to do for her community, even if it means risking her dreams. Breathtaking in its scope and powerful in its intimacy, We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies is a gorgeously written meditation on colonialism, displacement, and the lengths we'll go to remain connected to our families and ancestral lands. Told through the lives of 4 people over 50 years, this novel provides a nuanced, moving portrait of the little-known world of Tibetan exiles. Just a few more. From Turkey is Madonna in a Fur Coat by Sabahattin Ali, which is a romance. It is perhaps easier to dismiss a man whose face gives no indication of an inner life. And what a pity that is. A dash of curiosity is all it takes to stumble upon treasures we never expected. A shy young man leaves his home in rural Turkey to learn a trade in 1920s Berlin. The city's crowded streets, thriving art scene, passionate politics, and seedy cabarets provides the backdrop for a chance meeting with a woman, which will haunt him for the rest of his life. Emotionally powerful, intensely atmospheric, and touchingly profound, Madonna in a Fur Coat is an unforgettable novel about new beginnings and the unfathomable nature of the human soul. From Turkmenistan is The Tale of Yayyyy by Akwaselapar, which is historical fiction and fantasy. The Tale of Yayyyy follows the fate of a group of Turkmen fishermen dwelling on the coast of the Caspian Sea. The fear of losing their ancestral home looms over the entire village. This injustice is being made to look like a voluntary initiative on the part of the fishermen themselves, whilst the ruling powers cynically attempt to confiscate their land. One brave fisherman from the village rises up to confront them and fights for his native shores as a response to the act of cruelty inflicted on a defenseless young woman centuries ago. This unjustly executed soul returns as a ghost during this troubled time to exact a terrible revenge on the men of the village. The relationships among the characters mirror the internal opposition between the forces of nature with the intervention of mystical forces ratcheting up the tension. From the United Arab Emirates is The Sandfish, a novel from Dubai by Maha Kargash, which is historical fiction. A novel of Dubai, The Sandfish by Maha Kargash offers readers a fascinating glimpse into another corner of the world. Set in the 1950s in what is now the United Arab Emirates, The Sandfish tells a poignant and powerful story of a rebellious young woman trapped in a repressive society. As richly atmospheric a look at Middle Eastern life and culture as The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini and Ala al-Aswani's The Yacopian Building. 3 more. From Uzbekistan is The Dead Lake by Hamad Ismailov, which is historical fiction and literary fiction. A haunting Russian tale about the environmental legacy of the Cold War. Yurzan grows up in a remote part of Kazakhstan where the Soviets test atomic weapons. As a young boy, he falls in love with the neighbor's daughter, and one evening to impress her, he dives into a forbidden lake. The radioactive water changes Yurzan. He will never grow into a man, while the girl he loves becomes a beautiful woman. From Vietnam is Upon Me for Two by Trinity Nguyen, which is LGBTQ sapphic romance. In Saigon, Lan is always trying to be the perfect daughter, dependable and willing to care for her widowed mother and their Upon Me stall. Her secret passion, however, is Upon Me for Two, the food blog she started with her father but has stopped updating since his passing. Meanwhile, Vietnamese-American Vivi Hyun has never been to Vietnam. Her parents rarely talk about the homeland that clearly haunts them, so Vivi secretly goes to Vietnam for a study abroad program her freshman year of college. She's determined to figure out why her parents left and to try everything she's seen on her favorite food blog, Upon Me for Two. When Vivi and Lan meet in Saigon, they strike a deal. Lan will show Vivi around the city, helping her piece together her mother's story through crumbling photographs and old memories. Vivi will help Lan start writing again so she could enter a food blogging contest. And slowly, as they explore the city and their pasts, Vivi and Lan fall in love. And last but not least, we have What Have You Left Behind by Bushra al-Makhtari, which is nonfiction, history, and narrative memoir. Reminiscent of the work of Nobel Prize laureate Svetlana Alexievich, What Have You Left Behind powerfully draws together civilian accounts of the Yemeni civil war and serves as a vital reminder of the scale of the human tragedy behind the headlines. In 2015, a year after it started, Bushra al-Makhtari decided to document the suffering of civilians in the Yemeni civil war, which has killed over 200,000 people according to the UN. Inspired by the work of Svetlana Alexievich, she spent 2 years visiting different parts of the country, putting her life at risk by speaking with her compatriots, and gathered over 400 testimonies, a selection of which appear in What Have You Left Behind. Purposefully alternating between accounts from the victims of the Houthi militia and those of the Saudi-led coalition, al-Makhtari highlights the disillusionment and anguish felt by civilians trapped in a war outside of their own making. As difficult to read as it is to put down, Bushra al-Makhtari's unvarnished chronicle of the conflict in Yemen serves as a vital reminder of the scale of human tragedy behind the headlines and offers a searing condemnation of the international community's complicity in the war's continuation. And with that, that is one book from every country in Asia. I don't have too much else to say. This video is the longest one I have ever filmed. The raw footage is almost an hour and 20 minutes. So I am going to leave you here. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please like it. Comment down below which book sounded the most interesting to you. And if you want to see more from this series and more from me in general, please subscribe. I upload every other Thursday, and I will be continuing with this series all around the world. So, without further ado, this has been Moo. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!